Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session on men as allies in the struggle for women's empowerment. My name is Nadeem Mahomed. I am a director and the knowledge lawyer in the employment law department, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Chris Charter, who's the national practice head of the competition department at CDH, and Gift Nkosinathi Xaba, who's an associate in our pro bono department. I want to conclude with maybe some of your insights or views. We often, especially, in the recent past, maybe it's more common for it to come up, but historically it was an area that people always had a blind spot around, and that is transgender women and trans people. It's still, gender implicates them and implicates them in interesting and usually unusual ways. And many employers, many people, usually don't take the struggles or the particular challenges that this group of people face, take it seriously. Or sometimes it doesn't even surface in terms of their awareness. What do you think in terms, specifically first as a workplace, but maybe generally more broadly, should we think about in relation to trans people, and in this instance, since we're talking about Women's Month, specifically trans women, transgender women?
Again, during this conversation, you would have noted that I've been making all of my points and then circling back to education, right? I think it is important to acknowledge the fact that for the most part, even from the firm's perspective, most men around this subject matter are learners. We are, on the journey of learning. So we've got to first acknowledge that. That's a point of reflection. And what then that means after we've acknowledged it, it compels us to look into the issues and say, okay, what is it that we're learning? It makes us to interrogate, ourselves, our attitudes, our behaviors. Because at the end of the day, we've got to be accountable. We can't be on this consistent learning journey forever, So the point that you're making, I think it ties in with that we've got to we've got to understand that we're learning, and that is going to mean that there are some people who are going to understand the conversation in a certain way. And I think the organization, the leaders of the firm, and the firm as an organization, if our understanding of issues is not correct, I think there needs to be very clear, decisive action and communication as to where the conversation should be steered. Because our understanding and knowledge is quite limited on these issues. And that's partly, if not mostly, the reason why some men tend to take a step back, because now it becomes this very complicated discussion, and someone then chooses to say, I don't want to be caught on the wrong end of this. So I think there needs to be emphasis that we are all learning. We're not experts on this, but we need to commit ourselves to that learning. Our attitudes and our behaviors need to show that we have committed ourselves to that learning, and there should be certain milestones that we should be sort of, checking our progress on, and again, I think these conversations should not be around time periods where they are convenient to have. It should be really, a consistent commitment. There should be consistent points of reflection, and I think that's really when we can say we are able to gauge where we've come from and where we are going. And just one last point on my side again, the nuances, right? It is important again to understand that we are not engaged in these discussions and efforts because we are here to save women. that's not it, right? But it is also important. I was having a conversation with a colleague the other day, saying she was saying, why should men be sort of like, you know, dragged to these conversation in a or you know, us to be in this conversation in a manner that's sort of like ask them to, it begs them to be, they should be, they should be part of these conversations. They should take action. And for me, again, the point I raised with her was that there's nuances on this. I mean, many men don't really necessarily want to be on the sideline because they want to, because there's cultural aspects to it. There are learned behaviors. There are issues that speak to social upbringing and backgrounds. So there's a lot of nuances that both sides really need to understand. And again, there are a lot of issues that ourselves as men have got to understand ourselves about ourselves and our mental issues.
Yeah, everybody has. I mean, unfortunately, it's a human condition. Prejudice is a human condition. It is, which is, and so in other words, a natural. It's the tragedy of the commons, right? It's this natural tendency to put yourself in a tribe and put out people who are not in your tribe, whatever you define that tribe, outside it. And I certainly don't want to trivialize the challenges that trans men and transgender men and women face. I think, and at the risk of trivializing it, a lot of it feels like it's perhaps where, gay men and women were 40 years ago, over time, it seems that things which to parts of society seem very strange become far more acceptable. And again, risk of sort of being glib, you can talk about visible tattoos, or extra jewelry here's on your face. At one stage, it would have been good grief. This is like having a punk rocker. It can play out, it's kind of exciting, And I think, again, not to suggest that there aren't tremendous challenges even for gay men and women in society, in some societies in particular. I think so it's kind of come to grips with that, and it's no longer kind of an unusual thing. It's not. The tribe has grown, and I think in due course, if we are deliberate about cultivating tolerance for people and for differences in people and different approaches, different looks, different cultures, I think that will eventually translate, and the more evolved people will get there first, and the rest will then feel left out and have to get on board. But I think it's exactly as Gibb said. It's fundamentally, if you have a reaction to someone, a feeling of discomfort, I think it's important to be self-aware and interrogate that within yourself. Now, I'll give it some silly examples. Driving down the road, you get cut off. If you're afraid the ocean, that's got to be a woman driver. Stop yourself and say that makes no sense. It makes no statistical sense. It makes no scientific sense as to why the driver was a bad driver. But there is no reason why it's a woman or not. That was a learned reaction from me, and to say, slap myself on the wrist. Say that's not a good way.
We're going to invest in some sort of moral labor.
For sure. This is show age. Honestly, it doesn't. That's all as a harmless sexist norm. It just isn't. As soon as we say that, and we say it in just around the brass, where there's only men present, we are essentially perpetuating this sort of boys' club, and that is, I think, one of the fundamental challenges. I think, too, as I understand it from a lot of work, is it's not we're not overtly sexist anymore. You should hear that. Well, very few of us are that stupid. It is these subtle notions, that just a feeling that there's been a joke made about you. No one is going to make a joke to your face anymore, because that's just frowned upon and you're going to get sued. But that feeling that people are talking about me behind my back, and that feeling is not often imagined, And I think it's those kind of things that we've got to really try and, if we do want an inclusive, respectful workplace where we can actually engage with our colleagues as colleagues and worry only about the quality of their work and their contribution to the problem that we're trying to solve for clients, for instance. To get to that point, we really have to stop this kind of identity, tribalism, jokes at other people's expense or other demographics' expense. We've got to work deliberately to take that out of our mindset, and we think it's just who we are. It's not. It's learned, and you can relearn how to think about people and how to think about situations.
It's a journey that centralizes the dignity of irrespective of the identity, and prioritizing the agency. That also came up, and quite importantly in the
and I think realizing that those who are not benefiting from certain systemic exclusion privilege, are finding it even more difficult. I show, and I think that kind of realization, that and the irony of three dudes talking about women empowerment by ourselves is not lost on us, I guess. But I do think that we need to just understand that our job fundamentally is to take people at face value, and so let's move together. For me, it's not. I'd like to reframe it as this: that all of these questions are not women's issues or trans issues or gay issues. They are human issues, and we should all be working to solve them together.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Gift. I know, as Chris said, this is a really significant and rich topic of discussion. We can really sit here for a very long time talking about it. But I think we can conclude on that note. And I'd just like to thank you all for your very insightful views and comments and remarks. And I hope our audience finds it equally informative. Thank you.
The views and information expressed are those of the contributors at the time of publication and do not necessarily present those of the firm. All content is provided for general purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. We make no representations, warranties, or guarantees, whether expressed or implied, that the content on our podcast is accurate, complete, up-to-date, or reflects the current law. We accept no responsibility for any loss or damage, whether direct or consequential, arising from reliance on the information which is presented here.